Hi friends, welcome to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Caitlin and I like to film eyeshadow palette ranking and review videos, as well as the occasional other beauty content sprinkled in. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button because I post 2 videos every single week. And for those of you that are not new here, my face is happy that you are seeing it again. And listen, my face may look a little crusty. My makeup has been on for 13 hours now? 12 to 13 hours, 12 and a half hours. I just applied some powder and then I wear these glasses. They're like the neural lenses while I'm working because I stare at a computer screen all day. So anyways, if you see like a little line, I tried to apply concealer to that, but otherwise I just repowdered. I redid my lips, but then I ate dinner, so then I just put more lip oil on, but without redoing the whole thing. So we're looking a little rough, but I need to film this so that I can post it tomorrow, and it is my February eyeshadow palette ranking. So if you are new here, let me explain to you how I rank my eyeshadow palettes. I rank every palette that I used in the month of February, so not just new palettes, not just new releases, but every single eyeshadow palette that I use. Some of these palettes are old, some of them are new, some of them are somewhere in between. So that is what we're going to do today. We are going to talk through every eyeshadow palette that I used. I like to do my rankings this way because I like to kind of share like my evolving thoughts. And also I think it's interesting because honestly, at the end of the day, the ranking is tied to how the creator personally feels about the palette in that moment in time. So it's very wishy-washy, but it's fun, you know? And I was thinking about this the other day. I realized that all of my content that I kind of like posting or lean towards posting, there has to be like a winner, right? Like my palette battles where I do the brackets and things, there's a winner. Rankings, there's a winner. I just feel like my competitiveness is showing in all of these different videos that I do. Anyways, let's go ahead and rank every single eyeshadow palette that I used in the month of February. Have had some sweet tea and lemonade, so I don't know if it's the sugar or the caffeine in the tea, but I have a lot of energy. Is this twisted? I knew it was twisted. I could tell, I could feel it. Okay. I'm explaining this. If you watch my videos, these types of ranking videos that I do every month, sorry if this is redundant, but for those of you that are new, I rank my palettes in a very specific way. So I do put them from order of least favorite to most favorite. I don't count down the number because I spend like 45 minutes editing out footage of me counting every palette to like figure out what number I'm on because I cannot keep track. So I don't count it down. I will say I think there were 21 palettes, I believe, if I counted correctly. But what I do is I organize them into 4 categories. I will walk through what the categories are as we do each category. I feel like this is a better assessment because I will be honest with all of you, there's like 10 plus palettes in the top, like my holy grails. Like I used a lot of really good palettes this month, so I feel like it's and any one of those on any given day could change like what place they are there, but I love them all basically equally. So I just feel like I like the categories because it gets at the heart of that more. Anyways, I know that was a lot of explaining, so let me go ahead and pull the first category. So we have 2 palettes in the first category, and this first category are palettes that I feel meh about. They're palettes that I could take or leave. They're all right, but meh, that's just how I feel about them. So first up, and I kind of felt like I had to do this, but first up is the Nomad Cosmetics Orient Express palette. Now, truthfully, I don't think there's anything like wrong with this palette. It's just one of the older palettes I have in my collection. I did, if you watch my eyeshadow palette declutter, I did declutter this palette, but I brought it out so that I can include it in my Nomad ranking, and then I'm working through my palette battle bracket thing. So I did a look with this palette, and my look turned out nice. I did not use any of the shimmers because I feel like the shimmers are the part of this palette that I don't love, but I also have all of these like neutral mattes in other palettes, so it's just this color story isn't my favorite anymore. I do think the packaging is beautiful, and I think it's a cool theme. I liked the look that I created with it, but I didn't love it enough and feel like the palette's adding like so much to my collection that I need to undeclutter it, you know what I mean? Declutter it? I don't know what the word is. Next up is the Viseart Petit for Amelie palette. I used this when I was doing the Bethany Loves Eyeshadow, her palette romance challenge, and she had a prompt that was a palette like a strange bedfellow, and it was like a palette that like doesn't match your normal vibe or aesthetic. And I was saying I don't typically like quads and I don't typically go for neutrals, so seeing as this is both doesn't match my vibe, but I will be 100% honest and say that this palette is a very nice little neutral quad. If you want an easy quick look, especially if you're like traveling, I think this is perfect. So I do feel like it adds something to my collection, but it's not like a palette, like if this got lost or something, I wouldn't go out and repurchase it, you know? The next category also has two palettes, and these are palettes that I like, but have some issues with. And I change this category, I feel like, every video, but that's how I would define these two that are in here. First up in this category, we have the Glamlight and Chucky Crazy in Love palette. I do typically like to mention when I'm talking about a new palette or a new to me palette. So this palette is new. It launched, I think in February. I think it was like an anti kind of Valentine's Day launch. I'm gonna flip this because I just think it's so cool. The packaging, amazing. The palette, not bad. I really do love that it's like this smoky, dark, sultry color story. It's just compared to all the other palettes in this ranking, this is just where it fell. It's, you know, I do wish there was a slightly lighter matte shade, but I have lighter mattes that I can pull in. This one just doesn't go quite as light. Like it doesn't have quite as much contrast as I would like. It's all very mid-tone to dark. So I usually like to have like very light to very dark to have a little bit more variety in what I can do. So yeah, that's why this one's in this category. I like it, but I do have some issues with it. Also, it creased. I mean, I know I did a liner look, but it creased very badly. I need to try it out a bit more, but yeah. Anyways, I've only used it once, so take that review with a grain of salt. Next up is the Adept Cosmetics La Cienega palette. You can purchase this palette individually. I purchased it as part of the mystery box. I like this palette. I do. I think when I did the liner, I struggled a little bit with blending, but when I used them just like in my crease, the mattes blended okay. This shimmer Manhattan Beach is like, it's so pretty. So is Santa Monica Boulevard. I feel like the other three are pretty, but they're not like the Adept Cosmetics like mind-blowing shimmer quality. So I like this palette. It's just, I like every other palette in this more. And then my issue with this palette is just that, I mean, I don't know, this color story just doesn't speak to me as much and give me as many ideas as the other palettes, but I don't think there was a quality issue with this one. The next palette is another new palette, and I feel like I always like to kind of be thoughtful and think about, you know, and sort of talk about in these videos like, oh, a lot of new palettes are kind of towards the bottom, so like, what does that say? But I purchased a lot of eyeshadow palettes. My low buy, it went out the window. I'm feeling confident for March. It is March 3rd and there's already one palette that I want to buy, but so far just one. So I'm feeling good about it. But anyways, I probably just jinxed it. So let me just... Okay, so the next... Oh, I didn't even say what category we're on. This is a new category. So these are palettes that I really, really like. Really like them. I really like them a lot. That's the name of the category. So first up, we have the Odin's Eye and Makeup Just for Fun, the Flora Story palette. This palette is pretty. It's really pretty. The only reason it's not higher up is that it's a more muted color story, and I didn't love the look I did with it, and I've only used it one time. So I don't want to like put it higher or lower with palettes. I mean, I did that with its partner palettes that I've used more than one, or that I've only used one time too. But for this one, I didn't think it deserved to be lower because I do feel like the quality's there. I think the color story is really pretty, but I didn't want to put it higher when I didn't love the look the one time I used it. Does that kind of make sense? The next palette is not new. It was new last month, but it's not new this month. This is I feel like everybody has this at this point. So it's the Unearthly Mystery Box palette from Valentine's Day. So if you're not wanting to be spoiled still, avert your eyes. I don't know when I can stop saying that. But anyways, this is the Surrender eyeshadow palette, or it's pressed pigment palette. But this was the palette that they had in the Valentine's Day mystery box. It is so pretty. And let me tell you, these two multi-chromes, Captivating and Seductive, are so shifty. Like, they are so shifty. I was shocked when I wore it. I could see them in the pan that they were shifty, but I put it on my eye and I was like, oh yeah, you can see a little shift. They're shifty. And then I got in my mom's car and took a picture, and it was like, looked like I had green eyeshadow on my lid. Like, I was surprised. But anyways, it's so funny with Unearthly. I feel like I get into this place in my head where I'm like, their quality's good, but it's not like worth like the shipping times, which I did see them post today that they're transitioning a lot of their stuff to moving out of a warehouse, and a lot of people commented that their shipping's much faster. So maybe that'll be worth it. I don't know about you all. I'm an instant gratification person, so if it takes a long time to get to me, it kind of like lowers my experience. And I know that's bratty. I know that's like living in a post Amazon world. Like, I get it. I do. I've bought a lot of Unearthly stuff because to say like, it looks really amazing. And I love that she collaborates with artists or pays artists to do palette designs for her. I think her packaging and like design is amazing. I love it so much. I think she does a great job with that. And by she, I mean the owner. I want to say her name's Amanda. I think her last name is Hayden because she's Hayden Hans, but I feel like you all corrected me one time and said her name's Amanda. I don't know. But anyways, the owner of Unearthly, love the theming, love the packaging. Now, also, one thing I want to shout out to Unearthly. The Halloween mystery box and the Valentine's Day mystery box are like the best mystery boxes I've ever seen, ever gotten, ever had the joy and pleasure of using in my life. Like, I think she nails mystery boxes. So the next time she does a mystery box, I'm not saying you need it. You got to decide that for yourself because they are kind of pricey, but they do a good job. I really like those mystery boxes. I don't know what original point I was trying to make. Oh, I was trying to say that like, I get in my head and I'm like, if I haven't used one of the Unearthly palettes in a while, I'm like, yeah, the quality's fine. Like, it's good. It's not as amazing as everybody says. And then I use them and then I go, their quality is so good. Like, the mattes are good. The shimmers are good. They're just good. Like, it's just the quality and the formulas that they have are solid. So I really like Unearthly Cosmetics. I think the issue is that sometimes I struggle with the color stories, or I just sort of like, I buy too much makeup and I kind of forget about the palettes. But I've used this palette, I've used every shade in this palette, and I've used it 2, maybe 3 times now, and I really like it. Like, I really, really like it. So that was a very long tangent, but if you're still here, thank you. Next up is a new to me palette with like a question mark. It's the Bella Beauté Bar Star-Crossed Lovers palette. And I put a question mark because was released, I don't know, a year, maybe 2 years ago. And I don't know if it was a Valentine's Day release, but they relaunched it around Valentine's Day. And I want to say they relaunched it with their new matte formula. And so I wanted it when it initially launched, but like talked myself out of it because I had never tried the brand before, but now I'm obsessed with the brand. So when they were relaunching this, I was like, yes, I'm in. This is actually the palette that I have on my eyeballs today. I used the shade Lovesick, the shade Bloodshed, the shade Montague, I think that's how you say that, the shade Star-Crossed, Capulet, and Destiny. I love this palette. I do. I adore it. I think it's so pretty. I love purples, and so the purples and the berries and the multi-chromes, like I really like this palette a lot. I think the packaging is so cool. It gives Romeo and Juliet, but the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes vibes. You know what I mean? It's like that Romeo and Juliet specifically. Okay, next up is the Odin's Eye collab with Lauren May Beauty. This is the Sea Talk palette. I really like this palette. I did not get to use the shade Electric Kelp, which I really want to use, but I think this palette is gorgeous. I know it's like a half blue, half neutral palette, but you have this yellow and pink, which I feel like makes it different enough and fun enough that it's like a whole new thing. So I really enjoy this. I like Odin's Eye, the formula that they have, and I think this is a fun color story. And I like this pan size and shape for them. I think it's nice. You're all probably watching this and going like, we are in the middle to like bottom middle of this ranking and you like every single palette. And I just want to say, this was the hardest ranking I've ever done. Like, I I was about to put almost all of these palettes into the top category. I was like, it is crazy how much I like all of these palettes. Yeah, this was difficult. It was really, really hard. So yeah, but that's cool though. I feel like that means that I'm to the point in my collection where I have stuff that I really enjoy. And I'm trying to stick to my low buy. So it's feeling promising that for the most part, I really love everything I've bought. And yeah, anyways, I don't know. Next up is the Odin's Eye and Betty Jean, aka Batty Beans, Planet Spirit palette. I cannot speak. Oh my gosh, this palette. I think I made it pretty clear in my video, but maybe I didn't. But this was definitely my favorite look out of the look I did with each Odin's Eye palette, which by the way brings me to a point. I will link, if I have a video on my channel using any of these palettes, I will link that video in my description box down below. So if you want to see looks that I did with any of these to get inspired, check there. But anyways, the look I did with this palette in that Odin's Eye video, this was by far my favorite look. I was obsessed with it. These bright shades are so punchy. And I know I keep using that word, but that's the best word to describe it. They are punchy, bright mattes, and I love them. And I did almost an all matte look. I just used Fauna, which is a gorgeous multi-chrome. So I need to play around with these shimmers more. So I didn't want to put it too high because I only used like half the palette and I only used it once. But I really, really like this one. Next up might surprise some people, but it's the Angles of Illumination 3 palette from Bella Beauté Bar. And I was saying this is a hot, I need to clean this. I was saying this might surprise some people because this is one of the palettes that I had if I could only keep 10 palettes like challenge that I did at the beginning of the year. This was one of the palettes in that challenge. And I really, really like this palette. I think it is so pretty. All of the duochromes in here are gorgeous. It's really good. It is an all shimmer palette, so it is a companion palette. So that's something that I had to factor in with this ranking, although I have another companion palette that's higher. But anyways, I really like this. It's just, I just like the other palettes more. And I could have put this in the love, but I felt like I had too many palettes in the love category. So I had to bump this. I bumped this down one, and I literally switched this and the next palette back and forth like 3 times. So I don't know. The next palette, the last palette in this category, is the Adept Cosmetics Arrow Inspired palette. This palette is new. It's one of the new palettes that I got last month. This palette is gorgeous. These multi-chromes are so shifty. I don't know how Adept does it because I feel like all of my other multi-chromes, like I see the shift, but I don't know how to explain it. Like you can kind of see like a little hint of the shift depending on if you use a mirror, whatever, but it's not like I feel like I have an entirely different eye look when I walk into different rooms of my house, which is how I feel about this palette. I did a look, or the last look I did with this palette, I don't think it's on my channel yet. I have a video going up that's like a week of using new makeup, and so it's a bunch of these palettes that I used and did like short little videos with. But anyways, I did a look for that, and I swear when I was in my bathroom or my guest bathroom or my office or my living room, it looked like I had different shimmers on my lid, and it was so crazy. So I do feel like this matte formula is really solid from Adept. I think they've improved it, and I really like the shimmers in this palette. So that is why I put this one here. I don't quite have it in the love category yet because I have too many in the love category, and you know, choices had to be made. All right, this last category, I've been referring to it as the love category, but it's like palettes that I love, and they're also like holy grails. Like I would repurchase these palettes if I lost them or if something happened to them. Like I would be upset if they were not in my collection anymore, and that says a lot because I have like 150 eyeshadow palettes. So in theory, any of these should be able to go, and I would be fine. I should be fine with them being gone because I have plenty of things to replace it. So yeah, anyways. The first palette in this category is the Il Makiage and Kathleen Lights Disco Fox palette. I don't know if this palette's still available. I feel like it was limited edition and it might be sold out now, but I know it's a neutral palette. I know it's a basic neutral palette, so you might be thinking, like, with the explanation you just gave, if this palette is gone, it would be pretty easy to use anything else in your collection. But I'm sorry, there's something about these shimmer shades that is amazing, and they do not crease on me. And I have creasy eyelids. It is standard practice, standard procedure for eyeshadows to crease on me. I just know it. I just understand it. I've accepted it. It is what it is. These don't. They don't crease. They are like, those shimmers are on my lid and they do not move. they just stay sparkly. And if they start to fade, you still have this like sparkle. And it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just so pretty. So I really like this a lot. I feel like I talk about that palette so much because I really want people to understand why I like it, because I feel like a lot of people didn't buy this palette or don't like this palette, but I like it a lot. Next up is the Melt Cosmetics Gemini 2 palette. This is so gorgeous. Like, this is Melt at Melt's best. You know what I mean? It's like grungy, but like girly grungy, you know what I mean? And then you have like lighter mattes to darker swampy greens, and then you have these sultry shimmers. Like, it's just really good. I just really like it a lot. It's one of my favorite Melt palettes. Next up is the Simply Posh Cosmetics Berry Icy palette. This is another new palette for the month of February. I have used this palette 2 times, I think. I liked it both times. I think this palette is really pretty. I like this color story. Yeah, I had a great time using it. I think it's gorgeous, and I've used almost all the shades, so I'm working on reviewing the whole thing, but I really like it so far. I feel like I didn't sell that enough. I feel like it's, I'm like, I don't know if everybody understands how much I like Simply Posh's like eyeshadow formula. Their shimmers are amazing. Their mattes are amazing. So if it's a solid color story, I'm sold. I love it. It's a favorite. The end. Speaking of Simply Posh, this is a Fairy Tale Fairies palette. I put this one higher because I don't normally like pastels, but I love these. And I reached for these a lot when this palette was in my, if I could only have 10 palettes in my collection, like which 10 would I keep? And I kept this as one of them, and it was reached for pretty significantly, or frequently, I mean. So I really like this palette. I think this is my favorite of the Simply Posh palettes, but I don't know. I really like all of them. And it's funny because I feel like they all bring something different to the table. But they have some similar shades, but nothing's like exact dupes, but like they're all perfect in their own way. Next up is the Bella Beauté Bar Strange and Unusual palette. I adore this palette. I know I've talked about how the shade Barbara, which is the white shade, is not my favorite white shade. I feel like I have better matte whites, but I love every other shade in this palette. Even the matte red down here, which I feel like can be a shadow that I'm very particular about, but I do like this matte red. So yeah, anyways, I like it. The shimmers and duochromes and multichromes in this palette are insane. The shift on these is really crazy too, so I like this palette a lot. Next up is the Glamlight Barbie Dream Summer palette, and this palette is definitely perfect for summer. I think it's beautiful and bright and just so fun. You also have kind of these like grungier, darker browns over here, like these neutrals, which I think makes this like kind of an interesting color story. So I really like it. And so far this is my favorite formula that I've tried from Glamlight. So I don't know if it's necessarily like that they used a different formula for this one, or if it's that because of these shades being like so bright, it makes the formula like easier to use for me. I'm not sure, but I really like this palette, and I do like this formula. I actually didn't hate the formula in the Chucky palette either. The only palettes I haven't liked so far are the Scooby-Doo ones, and those are the only 2 that I haven't liked, and I've only tried 4 palettes from Glamlight, so here we are. Okay, this next one I feel really bad about because I really wanted to put it higher, but then I was like talked myself out of it because I feel like I have used these other palettes more, and so they should be higher, but I'm really torn. I don't know. But next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Amore y Morte palette. This one was, I think, new last month, so in January, I think is when I first got it. So it wasn't one of the new ones for this month, but this is what the color story looks like. Absolutely stunning and gorgeous. I love the packaging. I love the theming. I love the whole concept. I love how they split it to like a love side and a death side. I think I've used all but like 2 shades in this palette and used it like 3 times, but I really like this palette. I said this in the video that I did with this palette. I called it a work of art. And I feel like it is. It's so good. I love everything about it. But these other palettes, I don't know. This part is so hard. I've never struggled so much with a ranking, I swear. Next up is a new to me palette, but it's pretty new. I think I ordered it on the 1st pre-order, maybe the second, but this is the Ensley Rain Cosmetics and Brittany Huffman collab. This is the Midwinter Dream palette, and I adore this palette and this color story. The duochrome multi-chrome shades in here are freaking stunning. Like seriously, they're absolutely gorgeous. I am obsessed with this palette. I have loved every look I've done with it so far. I want to keep pulling for it, playing for it with it. It's perfect for this time of year. Yeah, I really, really like this. This was a palette that I missed it on launch day. It was so sad. They launched it like 30 minutes early and I was at work, so I didn't see that it had launched 30 minutes early, so I got on the site like right when I thought it was launching and it was already sold out. So I was devastated. And if we're being honest, a little salty. So I was like, I'm not buying that. You know, I don't need it. And I told myself and other people that I wasn't getting it because if I'm not first and at getting something, there's no point in me getting it because I can't make a video about it, yada, yada, yada. And then I saw a lot of my friends using it on social media and I was like, I just had really bad FOMO. So I bought it and I'm so happy I did. I really like this palette. So if you're debating this one, I think you'll be really happy with it. I don't think it's something like, I will never tell you that you need to drop what you're doing and go buy something. I mean, if I say that, I mean it like as in hyperbolic way, but I think if you're debating this palette like I was, where I was like, I don't think so. I don't think you would mind having it, but it is expensive. So I recognize that. So far, I feel like it's worth it though. I've really been enjoying it. Next up is another Brittany Huffman collab palette. This is the Bella Beauté Bar and Brittany Huffman collab. I think it's just called the Brittany Huffman palette, but look at that packaging. Is that not the best packaging you've ever seen in your entire life? It is so pretty. I love it. I'm obsessed. It feels like an acid trip when I stare at it. So does the inside of the palette. I love this color story. I used this palette when I did one of the Bethany Loves eyeshadow her palette romance challenge on Instagram. One of the challenges was a palette that is was it like your soulmate? And I think it's like a palette that's like vibe, color story speaks to your soul. And this is that palette for me. I want to reach for this all the time. I love the like grungy neon rainbow. That's how I describe this color story. I think it's amazing. I adore this. I don't think I've used a shade in this palette yet that I haven't liked. I will be honest, I haven't used every shade because I kind of this half of the palette is definitely, or really just this part. So like these 4 rows here are where I spend a lot of my time. I don't tend to go for these warmer colors over here, but so far haven't had any issues with it. Next up is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Surge palette. I think this palette is amazing. It's another palette that has neons and grungy shades, and that's my sweet spot. I don't like these shimmers, but I will be honest with you, if I'm using this palette, I'm not using these shimmers. So I don't really care that there's a whole row that I don't like because I like the rest of the palette so much that it makes up for it. Next up is the Danessa Myricks and Lightwork Volume 4 palette. This is the Transcendence palette. Gosh, this one's a hot mess too. I need to clean up some of these palettes. This palette I love. I love it. I love it. If I need shimmer shades when I'm using my Surge palette, this is probably the palette that I'm reaching for. I just love this. I think it's so pretty. This is another one that's pretty pricey. I will say I got mine with a gift card, so I didn't spend full. When I have a gift card, it feels like a discount to me. Like if the money didn't come out of my account, I feel like I didn't spend that much on it. So anyways, I do really enjoy this palette. I don't know if you can still get it. I feel like this was limited edition too, but I really like it. Last palette is the Ace Beauté Paledopoly palette. I think this was my #1 palette of the year last year, and I still love this palette. I do. I adore it. It's another one that's kind of like neon and grungy shades. Like if you give me bright, super bright mattes and super grungy and then pretty shimmers, that's it. That's all I need. That's all I'm asking for. You know what I'm saying? I think this palette is pretty. It did come with the game, and I feel like a lot of people got turned off from this palette because they didn't really want the game or they didn't want to play the game. I've played the game twice, but use this palette probably like 10 plus other times. Like I use it without playing the game all the time. So if the game's what's holding you back, don't let it hold you back. Hopefully this palette's still available, but I think it's pretty and I love it. That was everything. All of my palettes. I don't know if you noticed, but all like the top, what was it? The top 4 palettes were palettes that I've had for several months in my collection. So I think that's interesting. The top ranked palette that was new to me was the Midwinter Dream by Ensley Rain. But honestly, that's tied with that Nomad Cosmetics Amore y Morte. Those are definitely far and away, like, if I put all my new palettes stacked up, like, those two are like, well, I guess the Amore y Morte I got last month, not this month, but that's still new. You know what I mean? But those two are like, it's just, it's them and then everything else that I've gotten this year. That's probably dramatic. But anyways, let me know what you thought about this ranking. Let me know if there's any palettes that I ranked that you agree with, disagree with, palettes that you skipped, palettes that you want to get, things that you're shopping your stash. Like, I love talking makeup with all of you in the comments. So please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what palette you're using or used the most in the month of February. I actually did keep track of palettes that I like. Oh no, I didn't. That's a lie. Dang it, I did it for January and I forgot to do it for February. I was trying this thing this year where I was keeping track of like how many times I used each eyeshadow palette. I mean, I could count that out right now. You know what? 1 second. Okay, we have like kind of a multi-way tie. The palettes that I used twice, that's the highest number that it got in the month of February. But I used the Disco Fox palette twice. I used the Paletopoly palette twice. I used the Berry Icy palette twice. I used the Midwinter Dream palette twice. I used the Lightwork Volume 4 palette twice. I used the 2 Adept palettes twice. And I think that's it. And when I say twice, I mean in the month of February. So I didn't have anything that I like was reaching for constantly. But let me know if you had a palette that you used a whole bunch in February, or just what your favorite palette is as of right now. But yes, that's it from me. I will finally stop talking, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.